Hello, everyone in Facebook land joining us. This is Wes from Kinetic Chaos. You may notice we're a little bit different setup, different person. We're doing a special edition today. This morning, we'll be recording our later podcast this afternoon. The guy sitting next to me is my cousin Jon. He's visiting from California. He will also be joining us on our regular Thursday episode that we'll record this afternoon with Will. But this morning, we wanted to do a special episode, and this focuses on California and Washington politics and economics, just kind of a comparison. Me obviously being in Washington and Jon being from California. We thought we'd take some common points and kind of compare and contrast and see how alike or different our states are on some of these things. So Jon's got a couple things right off the bat to share with you that are different between Washington and California. So you'll be able to see that here. Jon, you got something you want to demonstrate there?
Yeah, so I'm from...
Get a little background. Sorry, yeah. I jumped the gun there.
I should get more specific. I'm from Santa Barbara, California. So some of the things I'm about to show you started in Santa Barbara, but now some of them have gotten to California overall. So the first thing is that is specific to Santa Barbara. I'm actually holding a plastic straw, and this is going to sound crazy. Why in the world do I have a straw with me? It's made the news in the last couple months. These are no longer allowed or going to be allowed in Santa Barbara. And so the whole theme here is I've got stuff that I'm not allowed to have when I'm back in California, but now that I'm up here visiting my cousin, I decided to try and touch and hold and experience again.
The contraband.
Cool. That's right.
Yeah.
First is the plastic straw. We're not allowed to be served these at restaurants. I guess we're going to have to ask for them starting in 2019. It's ridiculous. The second one, plastic bags. Now, this one has become statewide. I couldn't get one of these starting a couple years ago, but then last year, I think we had a proposition. They banned a plastic bag. We just got this morning, right? Yep. We went to the store. I decided to get 2 bags. It was such a novelty to me, so I carried my stuff in 2 bags. Now, the last one, and California is really known for this, and this is where we have a big difference between our states, is I'm holding a 30-round magazine and this is for an AR-15. So the AR-15 alone, we've got a problem of actually getting a classic standard AR-15. But with modifications, those sorts of things, we can actually have one. But that 30-round magazine is totally illegal to buy. People have had them for the last 20, 30 years that they may have bought a long time ago. But it's barely still legal to keep those grandfathered in.
Oh, I was going to say, can you grandfather them? Okay.
They passed some sort of legislation to remove that, but now that's kind of getting challenged in courts. So
okay.
We'll see. But nonetheless, right now what I'm holding is a relatively new 30-round magazine. Totally illegal. Couldn't even touch this. So all of this stuff that's in front of me, I'll give everyone a warning. I may not be here by the end of the episode.
So just if you were to buy that out of state, there's because it's not like an international border where you're going to have to pass through customs going from like Oregon to California. So you could theoretically smuggle that in. Yeah. And who would know about it, really? It's
true, but it's definitely, I guess, a misdemeanor.
Right.
If I am caught in the state owning one of these, that's right. Yeah. But
so what's the penalty?
That's a good.
You know,
they've been passing this stuff so fast and so often. I couldn't even tell you what they would do to me. Now I've talked and read about there's officers who the police officers kind of have their own thought as to the aggressiveness with which they're actually going to pursue people. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're starting off on gun issues, so I'll just wrap it up with this, although we may get to it a little bit later. But this is just the tip of the iceberg for us. Starting next year, I will have to, currently this year, I have to purchase ammunition from a store that has a license.
Okay.
I can no longer order ammunition online, which has become pretty big, I get the sense, in the last couple years. Starting in 2019, I will have to undergo a background check to buy a small box of
Just a box of ammo.
They're going to make me swipe a card. Everyone's going to get issued a card that has, I guess, pass some test or something.
So you apply for this card ahead of time.
That's right.
Undergo the background check. Then once you've passed the check, you get issued this card saying you've passed the background check and you're now allowed to buy ammo.
Exactly. Which, as you can imagine, just like as they're talking about online, now they'll know and they'll track have what has John purchased,
Yeah.
what ammunition does he own. They obviously know, because I have to register as in other states, but I have to register all the firearms I purchase.
Okay,
So they,
yeah.
no question now they can track and will keep track of both sides of the
dangerous,
equation.
slippery slope thing.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of that, it's going to happen the same with. I currently cannot purchase a handgun, but once every 30 days.
Okay.
But a long rifle, no problem.
No limits.
They're going to change that, and now I can only purchase one gun every 30 days.
Wow.
At the end of the day, the whole thing to me is, again, it's a simple point, but as I'm holding this right here, this in of itself isn't dangerous, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of like, what is actually spreading these things out over 30 days actually going to accomplish? Time will tell, but unfortunately, I think time's going to show the legislators in our state that these things don't actually impact. Because the people that follow the laws, like me, we're never going to intend to do anything.
Which is obviously the whole gun control laws to begin with is based on that premise and that fallacy that, you know, law-abiding citizens are going to follow those laws, but criminals will always circumvent those laws. They're always going to find a way around it. So
no question.
No matter how many laws you pass, you're only impeding the law-abiding citizens. The criminals are going to figure out their own way.
So, and again, I want to jump in. We'll get into economic and other stuff, but to close this out, I'm curious because we've had some conversations about how this element, though other elements are similar between our states, but this particular element, the Second Amendment issues, much different in Washington, right?
It is much different. However, there's a current bill in the coming up for a vote in November on the general ballot for the state. It's 1639, I believe, is the initiative number. And it's a big gun control measure, and I unfortunately I should know, and I need to research. I'm a hard no on the thing just because it is a gun control measure.
Sure.
But in terms of the specifics, I can't quite remember the specifics. But I think it has to do a lot with. I think one of them is the banning of the certain semi-auto kind of rifles.
Oh, really?
And,
they're going
to starting to crack down on some of that. I don't think they're going as far as the whole ID or background check for ammo.
Every
kind
purchase of everything,
right?
Yeah.
But they are trying to get a bunch of regulations put in place, and that will be going on our ballot or coming on our ballot in November for the general. But I would imagine Will and I will talk about this as time gets closer on our regular podcast too. Like I said, I need to do a little more research as to the specifics of this initiative, but it is basically a big time gun control initiative. So.
It sounds like the first time that something of this
they tried it.
Would be
they tried a similar gun control thing. I want to say I don't know if it was 4 or 8 years ago, and it failed.
Okay.
But they're trying it again now, and whether or not obviously the urban dense population around the Seattle area that would lean towards gun control. They would obviously be all for it versus the more rural area, east side of the state, and even somewhat down here in the south part of the state would be against it. But then obviously it's the whole thing. You're fighting the vote totals because you got the population dense area, Seattle, who's all going to vote for it versus the rural, lesser populated areas would vote against it. So it's going to be,
and that's where I'm sure the demographics and the just the migration around the state and who's coming in into what areas is. Maybe they know over the last 4 to 8 years
that's
that
true.
The Seattle area has.
They think they can make a go of it because of that. Yeah. So I think, are you done?
Yeah. That kind of segues into.
So I think we'll start off with just some background info, some demographics, comparison between Washington and California. So I'll just run down my list and I'll state the demo piece, and then I'll give the Washington number, and then John can follow it with the California number. So starting off with is just apples to apples comparison of the population of our states. Yeah. And Washington is at 7.4 million, which is way less than you.
Yeah, we're almost at 40.
Yeah.
I think we're at 39 and change as of last year.
Yeah, so that's a
39 and a half
big difference. So basically, 5+ times the amount that we got. So.
Which I didn't look this stat up, but geographically wouldn't dictate that. I mean, Washington's a decently large state. Certainly not 5 times bigger.
Right.
But yeah, we have I guess more than 5 times the number of people that you guys do.
And then the state income tax, and that's the big difference one because here in Washington there is none. We're one of the few states in the union And that's another point of contention.
Yeah, because I want to bring that up after I go through the...
There's been a lot of rumblings that some of the legislators would like to introduce an income tax, but as of now, it's zero, and hopefully it stays that way.
What's really interesting, right, is people always talk about, for California, so we have the trifecta. A lot of states, and this is an interesting topic because I want to loop back to you on property taxes, but we have the trifecta in California. We have income tax, and I'll go through the brackets because that's an interesting, to me, that's telling for California. But we have the income tax. We have property taxes, though they would tell you in California that's the one that we're protected against and throttled, and I'll explain. Yeah. And we also have sales tax everywhere. So most states, right, they always talk about they exist on 2 of the 3.
Yes.
Or I guess some 1, but nonetheless, most states do not have
the 3 taxes across the board.
We have the benefit of being levied all 3 taxes.
So do you want to get in, before we move on, you want to get in the tax brackets?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what's really interesting about in California when you look at it, and you often hear them talk about the very top bracket, which is I think 12.3%. Granted, that's for people that make over $530,000 a year. So obviously in the
and I believe that's for a single person, and then that's double. So if it's a married couple, that would be $1 million plus.
I think you're right.
I think they double the
That's
numbers,
right. Married filing jointly is double that. So obviously, we have sectors, a lot of tech sectors in San Francisco, banking, and then in Los Angeles. Certainly some people in California that's going to apply to, but they always like to say, well, that's going to be on the top, right? Not to bore you with numbers for a second, but just to kind of step through and bounce around some of these brackets. It starts off, you pay 1% at $8,000. And I'm just going to quote you the single numbers.
So yeah.
You pay 1% at $8,000. By the time you're at $40,000, and I'm skipping some here because it's really graduated, but by the time you're at $40,000, you're paying 6%. And you pay 8% at $52,000 a year. Which, now granted, the next jump, and that's where it used to end for a long time, and that would be the high. They tacked on these other brackets in the last 4 years. They were going to be temporary when they first passed them, but miraculously they got instituted as to be permanent.
Yeah.
But you get up to at $270,000, you pay 9.3%. But to step back for a second, a little over $50,000 a year, and you're already paying 8% in income tax. It's a progressive tax, which obviously we have federally, but the rapidness with which it rises to get to, 8% again on top of what you're already paying federally, you're there extremely quickly. 52,000.
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge.
In terms of property tax, that's the one where they say we have some protection because we have Prop 13, which got passed in the 70s, which locks ours in when someone purchases a home. It locks it in at a little over 1%. And it will only ratchet up at a specified small percentage each year. So that's not where they're technically tacking and getting revenue. Where they're really messing with is these progressive income taxes. Whereas for you, right, it's property taxes are made.
Yeah, and we actually took a big jump here this year with the Washington State Supreme Court and a case. It was called the McCleary case, the McCleary decision, which ruled that basically the state schools had to be fully funded right off the bat. They couldn't necessarily kick the can down the road anymore. So that in order to bring everything up to snuff with the standards of funding for state schools, they had to jack everybody's property taxes up this year to get up to where they were supposed to be. Basically, the Supreme Court ruled that we're no longer allowed to kind of more of a, I don't know, not necessarily pay as you go, but they wanted the funds there now, kind of thing. So here, for me personally, my property taxes went up. Boy, I want to say. It was over 10%.
Oh, really?
We had definitely more than 10. I want to say maybe even closer to 20. It was a huge jump.
And do you know in a rough sense what your property taxes are as a percentage of the value of the property, or what on average what?
Yeah, so for us it would be
I'm gonna guess it's over a percent.
Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head. I can't think, but
I'm just curious from and you have sales tax.
And sales tax, and then there's also the state sales tax, and then you have your local cities that can tack onto that as well.
Which happens in California as well.
Yeah,
there's
so
like a base level of 7.5 or something for the state of California.
And I think we're kind of in that neighborhood too for a base state tax. State sales tax, we're in the neighborhood of the mid-7s, I believe. And then I think here locally where we're filming right now in Washougal, I think our city sales, combined city and state, I think it takes it up to like 8.2 is where we're at.
And I think it's Santa Barbara in the 9s.
Okay,
now.
yeah.
So there was a recent measure for a police station or something that they've temporary, we'll see. Yeah. But they've tacked on an extra sales tax.
Yeah.
So, but you get your big relief is the income tax.
Yeah,
you have
right.
Like we said.
And like I said, but if that goes out the window with these legislators wanting to potentially introduce an income tax, that's going to be pretty painful. So.
And they tried to start that in Seattle. Is that right? They tried to do some sort of within the borders.
Yes, they did.
That right? An income tax.
And I think they took the opponents of that took that to the Supreme Court in the state and got that thrown out, that it was unconstitutional within the state constitution. It was unconstitutional to do a tax like that just for a certain jurisdiction, certain zip code kind of thing. So that got tossed out. As
a lot of people watching may know, and as Wes and I have talked about, that those seem to be a Seattle area, and then for us, San Francisco, LA, those are the real parallels that are happening. Right. We've seen some of the stuff already in California that has been introduced in Seattle that has made its way to the Silicon Valley in the Bay Area that they've tried. And so there's cities that seem to try to be doing each other. They play off each other, yeah. So the next demo that we'll do is median house price. Yeah. And I've got the most current thing I could find was for the end of 2017 for the state of Washington. The median house price was $338,000. Yeah, I have from the California Association of Realtors. It says 2018, but so let's say it's the beginning of this year. Is at $591. Wow. And in a state like ours, that's going to vary. Median is median, right? Statistically, but you look at everything from the Bay Area, where people are paying over $1 million for a little tiny house. Yeah, what looks like was a couple of shacks at Home Depot that were glued together, and they're paying over $1 million for that in the Bay Area. Yeah. Versus, you go out to probably some areas in Riverside or even the Central Valley or Northern California, and you're going to pay $300,000. Maybe mid twos, but certainly $300,000 to buy you something pretty nice. Yeah. And then following up with that would be the median income for the state. Yeah. And this was an interesting one. And then actually the most recent stats I could find for Washington was 2016 was the most recent report I could find. Yeah. And they had it at $81,000 for the median income for Washington. And I had there was a census 2016. I have almost 68,000. Although I know you have a number that differs slightly, but nonetheless, they're both lower. Both of our California numbers, right, are lower. Yes, that's correct. Washington has the higher number for the median income, which is interesting. That is, I was very surprised to see that. Yeah, especially, and I was just trying to think that through. You obviously have a big tech sector in the Amazon area. We have a big tech sector in Silicon Valley, and I say that because oftentimes nowadays, right, the tech sector comes with it high-paying jobs, the big money, yeah. But maybe a lot of it has to go back to our population number, right? And the spread. Yeah, you got a lot bigger spread of stuff. Yeah, socioeconomic situations. And then our final piece of background info in terms of demographics, I wanted to touch on the top 3 industries for our states. Yeah. So I'll just rattle off Washington's 3 real quick. Number 1 is aerospace, which you figure Boeing is the big boy. Yeah. Number 2 is agriculture, which is basically the entire eastern half of the state is heavily into ag. And then number 3, I was kind of surprised because I was thinking tech would be on this list somewhere, and it's not. Yeah. So I was a little surprised to see that. But number 3 for Washington is clean energy. So we're talking the wind farm, which is also another big deal out east and up the gorge from here. All the wind farms is a big deal around in the state now. So, but I was surprised to see that there and not something like tech. I would have figured tech would have made the top 3 for Washington, but it didn't. Yeah, and so the list I found was, I think they're going to categorize them slightly different. They didn't unfortunately get as specific as you did, as yours listed. But top one total, and this is from just gross state products produced. Professional and business services, which I guess just encompasses, all legal, financial services. I guess it's just very service oriented.
Okay.
Now, one thing that's funny, you mentioned aerospace.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta believe that if we wound the clock back in California 30, 40 years, that would have made, maybe not the top 3, but that would have been on the list somewhere. Manufacturing,
like Lockheed and stuff, weren't they based?
That's all we have left, basically, is Lockheed Martin. Lockheed and Northrop are in by Edwards Air Force Base, which is Southern California-ish, but in the desert. But we used to have Boeing manufacturing the C-17. They used to manufacture McDonnell Douglas, the MD-80 plane, the engines on the back that people would recognize. That got made there. We have none of that. All of that's gone. It's either come up here, Boeing is consolidated, and it's up here, or it's in South Carolina.
That's right. That's their other big hub,
So that, for a host of reasons that we could go down rabbit holes talking about, we basically have none of that anymore. So it's a lot of these service businesses. The second one, education and health. Now, I was trying to sit there when I read that and speculate. I'm going to guess that we also have because we have quite a robust safety net program in California, health services, education. We spend a ton of money per capita on
and
those
so
things.
I would assume that takes into account all the Cal State system and stuff like that.
I think that's exactly right. Our UC and CSU system combined, which has its whole other sort of pension issues. But you're right. That in of itself is a large industry. So that's kind of makes sense why that's vaulted to the top. And then financial activity, and I think, which probably this sort of thing would be number one for a New York or even a Chicago. But between San Fran and LA, there is a banking sector. San Fran more than LA. As far as the West Coast goes, I think San Fran is considered the banking
capital
hub.
Kind of thing.
On the West Coast. Again, small relative to Chicago or especially New York. But I think we in San Fran would be known more for that than Seattle. I know there's a little bit of banking, but it's more tech in Seattle, I think, than banking. But that's financial activities. And it's for us, what was really surprising to me, and I guess maybe depending on how they sliced all this, what was really surprising to me is farming, because we have just like you do in the East, in the Central Valley of California, we produce a lot. But that was way down at the bottom of the list.
That's weird.
It is weird, 1-2%. And then information, which is where they lump tech was like 8 or 9%. Wow. So
I'm surprised. I would have figured that ag would have been right up there too, because you figure, it seems like, half the produce we see around here is all California. Kind of your tomatoes and all your fruits and vegetables. A lot of that stuff ends up here, because with us up here, we're known for mostly, especially in Washington State, would be like apples and cherries. Are the two big things for us.